This is the Sabbath School lesson for the first quarter, 2022.
Welcome to Lesson 1 in the series In These Last Days, the Message of Hebrews. This lesson is titled The Letter to the Hebrews and to Us. It's ready for teaching on January 1, 2022, Thursday, December 30. These Last Days. Read Hebrews chapter 1 verse 2, chapter 9 verses 26 to 28, chapter 10 verse 25 and 36 to 38, and chapter 12 verses 25 to 28. What point is Paul stressing here, particularly regarding time? Hebrews 1 verse 2 has in these last days spoken to us by his Son, whom he has appointed heir of all things, through whom also he made the worlds. And chapter 9, verses 26 to 28, he then would have had to suffer often since the foundation of the world, but now, once at the end of the ages, he has appeared to put away sin by the sacrifice of himself. And as it is appointed for men to die once, but after this the judgment, so Christ was offered once to bear the sins of many. To those who eagerly wait for him, he will appear a second time, apart from sin, for salvation. And Hebrews 10:25, notwithstanding the assembling of ourselves together, as is the manner of some, but exhorting one another, and so much the more as you see the day approaching. And chapter 10, verses 36 to 38. For you have need of endurance, so that after you have done the will of God, you may receive the promise. For yet a little while, and he who is coming will come, and will not tarry. Now the just shall live by faith, but if anyone draws back, my soul has no pleasure in him. And chapter 12, verses 25 to 28. See that you do not refuse him who speaks, for if they did not escape who refused him who spoke on earth, much more shall we not escape if we turn away from him who speaks from heaven, whose voice then shook the earth. But now he has promised, saying, Yet once more I shall shake not only the earth, but also heaven. Now this, yet once more, indicates the removal of those things that are being shaken, as of things that are made, that the things which cannot be shaken may remain. Therefore, since we are receiving a kingdom which cannot be shaken, let us have grace by which we may serve God acceptably with reverence and godly fear. There is a very important element that the apostle emphasizes that adds urgency to his exhortation. The readers are living in the very last days, as he read in chapter 1, verse 2, and promises are about to be fulfilled, chapter 10, verse 36 onwards. It is interesting, as we will see, that throughout the document, Paul compares his audience with the desert generation that stood right before the border of Canaan, ready to enter into the promised land. He reminds them in chapter 10, verse 37, For yet a little while, and he who is coming will come, and will not tarry. And then he encourages them in 10:39, We are not of those who draw back to perdition, but of those who believe to the saving of the soul. This last exhortation reminded the readers and us about the dangers that the people of God have historically experienced right before the fulfillment of the promises of God. The book of Numbers talks about this very thing. The biblical record says that 2 times, right before entering the promised land, Israel suffered important defeats. The first time, recorded in Numbers 13 and 14, tells us that the doubts that several leaders spread throughout the congregation which caused the faith of Israel to fail. As a result, the congregation decided to appoint a new leader and return to Egypt, just at the moment they were about to enter Canaan. The second time, the Israelites got entangled with sensuality and false worship in Baal Peor, in Numbers chapter 25 and chapter 24. While Balaam was not able to bring a curse upon the Israelites, Satan used sexual temptations to lead Israel into false worship and sin, and to bring God's displeasure upon them. Paul warns the readers of Hebrews against both dangers. First, he exhorts them to hold fast to the confession of their faith and to fix their eyes upon Jesus. And the first text is Hebrews 4:14. Seeing then that we have our great high priest who has passed through the heavens, Jesus the Son of God, let us hold fast our confession. And Hebrews 10, verse 23, let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful. And Hebrews 12, verses 1 to 4. Therefore we also, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which so easily ensnares us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who, for the joy that was set before him, endured the cross, despising the shame, and has sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. For consider him who endured such hostility from sinners against himself, lest you become weary and discouraged in your souls. You have not yet resisted to bloodshed, striving against sin. Second, he exhorts them against immorality and covetousness in Hebrews 13, 4-6. Marriage is honourable among all, and the bed undefiled, but fornicators and adulterers God will judge. Let your conduct be without covetousness. Be content with such things as you have, for he himself has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you. So we may boldly say, the Lord is my helper, I will not fear. What can man do to me? Finally, he exhorts them to observe and obey their leaders. In chapter 13, verse 7, remember those who rule over you, who have spoken the word of God to you, whose faith follow, considering the outcome of their conduct. And verse 17, obey those who rule over you and be submissive, for they watch out for your souls as those who must give account. Let them do so with joy and not with grief, for that would be unprofitable for you. And so to finish today, considering our understanding of the state of the dead, and that as soon as we close our eyes in death, the next thing we know is the second coming, why can we say that all people have lived in the last days? This lesson was read by Dr. Percy Harrold for Christian Services for the Blind. Sponsored by the Sabbath School Department and distributed through Hope Channel Australia, this podcast is also redistributed by Hope Channel Germany, Christian Record Services for the Blind, and It Is Written. It is also available on SoundCloud and through multiple podcast distributors, including Apple iTunes. Remember, God is always faithful.